What is up? Hello, Ego here. I got a short one for you today. It's just something interesting about Ableton's Reverb that I noticed a while back that I would like to share with you. So, first things first, is Ableton's Reverb stereo or mono? Well, it's kind of both. It's like a mono input and then a stereo output. So what that means is that only the center channel, only the mono content of whatever you're putting through it is going to get reverbed, and then the output of that is going to be like a nice, stereo reverb, right? Like normal. Let me demonstrate this for you. So I have here a little bass loop I've got from like one of my Patreon packs here. Right? Just a nasty bass thing. Let me go ahead and throw some reverb on this, and we're going to hear that. Right? Because, reverbing bass is something you do all the time and you always should do. Kidding. But sometimes. But now check this out. If I add a utility here and put it before my reverb, and I right click the width knob and I choose mid side mode for the utility, what this basically does is if I turn it all the way to the sides, then what it does is it turns down the center channel. That means it essentially is turning down all of the signal that is identical in both channels, right? Because if you have waveforms in the left and the right that are identical, then that creates a mono image. If you have waveforms that are opposite of each other, that creates a pure stereo image, and we play those get together, and our brain reinterprets that as a full continuous stereo spectrum. And actually, let me just really quickly show you that so you're not confused about this. I'm going to go ahead and make two copies here. This one will be mono. This one will be stereo. I'm going to get another utility. And I'm going to right click this onto mid side mode, copy it onto both. On this one, I'm going to turn it all the way to the side. You guys call this mid and side. Actually, that's a little bit, it's a little bit more appropriate. And then we'll turn this one to mid. I'm just going to freeze and flatten both of these. And we can see here what we've got is in the mid section, if I zoom in the waveform, you'll see that these waveforms are both identical, right? Like if you look, they are exact copies of each other. But if I check out the sides, you're going to see that they are perfectly opposite of each other. Whenever one goes up and down, the other one goes down and up, like that. All right? So that is what mid and side content is. And the stereo image is comprised of a combination of that. And so unlike with the width mode, right, where that just widens or narrows, right, that basically like either pushes left and right further apart or it adds left and right together. This actually just turns down everything identical or turns down everything that's totally opposite. So that's just a brief explanation of what the mid-side mode on utility does. Hopefully that was useful. And I just want to really quickly show you here, if I set this all the way to mid, we still get some reverb, right? Here it is dry. There's our reverb sound. But if I set this all the way to side, first of all, it sounds weird, right? It's really wide sounding. But if I turn this dry wet all the way up, so we're getting only 100% of the reverb signal, you're not going to hear anything. Perfectly silent, right? We can see that audio is coming in to the reverb, but no audio is going out of the reverb. And this is because we only get a reverb effect on the mid channel of any audio going into reverb. So no matter what's going on in the sideband, you're not going to get that reverbed. So for example, let's just do something kind of weird here. I've got this little percussive sound, which you can tell here, right? There's the reverb. There's no reverb. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little percussive sound and I'm going to set it up so that we're only getting the pure stereo content on it. Let's do, I don't know if this is, I just came up with this idea right now. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to go to the sides and I'm going to freeze it and flatten it. So we should be getting a purely opposite signal. Yep, there we go. You can see that when one goes up, the other goes down. That's a purely stereo signal there. And let's just go ahead and there. Hear how weird and wide that sounds? I'm going to go ahead and layer that over my bass sound, and on the bass sound, I'm going to get rid of my reverb, and I'm going to turn this just in the mid, freeze and flatten this as well. And I'm just going to overlay this on top of whenever the bass happens, like that. So now we get this very strange sound where we got this click on the sides and the bass purely in the center. Kind of a weird sound, right? Now, if I'm correct, if I do this and I put a reverb on this, then we shouldn't hear that click in the reverb signal at all. Let's try it. Right? When I turn the dry wet down, we can start to hear it because we're allowing some of the dry signal to pass through. But we can see this click that's happening is not coming through Ableton's reverb. There you go. So, I mean, what do you do with this information? I don't know. Honestly, just know it, understand it, know that this is happening, know that whatever sound you put through it is going to be the pure mono image of that sound being reverbed. It could drastically change the tone of that sound, right? Like if you had crazy good stuff on the sides that you wanted to wash out, it's not going to happen. All right, it's not going to happen. So just be aware of that. I'm wondering if this happens with other reverbs in Ableton as well. Before I talk about that, though, I just want to mention, if you like this information, if you find it useful, please go ahead and join my Patreon. It would mean so much to me. I offer sample packs monthly that include some of these samples that I was showing you here. I offer monthly tutorial videos that go way more in depth than the kind of stuff I post here. Track review, custom sample packs. If you want me to make you something specifically, I will do that for you. And I also offer private lessons as well. Let's jump back in here and double check and see if it's just the regular reverb in Ableton or if it is the other reverbs like hybrid. Does hybrid reverb also is restricted to the mono center? I didn't say that word right, but you know what I'm trying to say. Nope. Check that out. So the hybrid reverb will reverb the sides. So it's a stereo in, stereo out reverb. Let's check out, okay, the convolution. Yep, and the algorithmic. Yep. There you go. So Ableton's standard reverb, mono in, stereo out, or mid in, stereo out. Ableton's hybrid reverb is stereo in, stereo out. And really, I guess this regular reverb here is technically mono in, stereo out, because as opposed to just passing through the mid signal, what it does is it adds together the left and the right. And what happens if you add together left and right when it's like -1 and +1? You get 0. So it cancels out, right? So it just cancels. It adds together all the stereo image, cancels everything that is wide, and then makes a purely mono signal coming through. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. There's a link to the Patreon in the description below, and I hope I see you there. Goodbye.